Michael stood tall in his black suit, smiling proudly on his wedding day. Beside him was Linda, his new bride, glowing in her white gown. Guests whispered, laughed, and waited eagerly for the moment he had planned. "Wait until she walks in," Michael bragged to his friends. "Today, the whole city will see how far I've risen, and how low she has fallen." The sound of engines outside silenced the hall. A shiny black Rolls-Royce slowly pulled up. The doors opened, and gasps filled the air. Sarah stepped out. Her golden gown sparkled under the lights. But that wasn't all. Holding her hands were 3 beautiful children, triplets, dressed in matching outfits. Michael's smile disappeared. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The guests turned, whispering louder and louder. "Isn't that Sarah? But how? She has children? And a Rolls-Royce." Michael's legs shook. He felt his entire plan crumble before his eyes. But how did this day come to be? Let me take you back to where it all began. Sarah lived in a tiny one-room apartment with her husband, Michael. Life was tough, but she never complained. She worked long hours at a small shop, saving every coin to support Michael's dreams. "Don't worry," she would tell him, smiling through her tired eyes, "one day, things will be better." But things weren't better. For 5 years, their marriage was filled with poverty, empty plates, and endless bills. And the hardest part? Sarah could not conceive. The whispers started slowly. Michael's family called her barren. Neighbors mocked her behind closed doors. Yet Sarah stayed strong, believing love was enough to hold her marriage together. One night, Michael came home angry. "I'm tired of this life, Sarah," he shouted. "No money, no children, nothing. What's the use of staying with you?" Her heart broke. She had given him everything, her youth, her strength, her loyalty. But he only saw her empty womb and empty pockets. She fell asleep that night with tears on her pillow, never knowing that Michael was already planning a betrayal that would change her life forever. The next morning, Sarah woke early as usual. She boiled water for Michael's bath and placed bread on the table. But when he stepped out of the bedroom, his face was hard, his eyes cold. "Sarah," he said flatly, "I can't keep living like this." She turned, confused. "What do you mean?" Michael slammed his fist on the table. "Look around you. We have nothing. And worst of all, no child. 5 years, Sarah. 5 empty years." Tears welled in her eyes. "Michael, it's not my fault. We can see a doctor, we can pray, we can." "Enough," he cut her off. "I need a real future. My family is right. You've given me nothing but suffering. I'm leaving." Sarah froze, her hands trembling. "Leaving? Where will you go?" Michael looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "There's someone else. Her name is Linda. She has everything you don't. Money. Influence. And soon, she'll give me children." Sarah's world shattered. She dropped to her knees, clutching his trousers. "Michael, please. After everything we've been through, I sold my jewelry so you could start your business. I borrowed money from friends to pay your debts. I stood by you when everyone else left." But Michael pulled her hands off coldly. "And what did it give me? Nothing. I'm done." He walked out, leaving Sarah kneeling on the floor, her tears soaking the tiles. That night, she cried until her body ached. She felt abandoned, worthless, invisible. Days turned into weeks. Michael never returned. Instead, Sarah heard the whispers in the neighborhood. Michael was now living in a grand house with Linda. He drove new cars, wore expensive suits, and smiled for photographs. Each rumor stabbed her heart deeper. But the final blow came when Sarah received a golden envelope in the mail. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation. Michael and Linda. He had invited her. At the bottom of the card, in neat handwriting, were chilling words. "Come and see what a real wedding looks like." Sarah's lips trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. But deep inside, something else began to stir. The wedding day drew closer, and the city buzzed with excitement. Michael and Linda's faces filled billboards, newspapers, and social media posts. They were the picture of wealth and power. Linda wore diamonds in every photo. She smiled as though she had won the greatest prize of all, Michael. People whispered that she was beautiful, intelligent, and, most importantly, already expecting a child. Meanwhile, Sarah's world grew smaller. She avoided the markets where neighbors gossiped. She stayed indoors, her only company the painful silence of her empty apartment. But at night, when the lights went off, she couldn't stop the images in her mind. Michael laughing with Linda, Linda carrying the child she could never give him. One evening, Sarah clutched the invitation card again. She read the words over and over, "Come and see what a real wedding looks like." It was a knife to her heart, yet something inside her refused to break completely. She looked into the mirror, her tear-stained face staring back at her. "If he wants me to come," she whispered, "then I will come. But not as the broken woman he left behind." Far across town, Michael laughed with his friends at a bachelor's party. "She'll come," he said confidently. "Sarah will walk in wearing that same faded dress of hers. And when she sees me standing there with Linda, she'll know she lost. She'll know she was nothing." His friends laughed, raising glasses of champagne. "Michael, you're wicked," one joked. "That's not wicked," Michael replied smugly. "That's justice." But Michael didn't know what was happening on the other side of the city. Sarah had begun making quiet phone calls. She visited a tailor late at night. She sat with someone inside a gleaming office building, signing papers. Her tears had dried. Her voice had changed. She was preparing. And on the morning of the wedding, while Michael admired his tuxedo in the mirror, Sarah stepped outside to a waiting car. Not just any car. A Rolls-Royce. The grand wedding hall sparkled with gold curtains and crystal chandeliers. Linda walked through the decorations with pride, inspecting every detail. "Everything must be perfect," she told the planners. "Today, I become Mrs. Michael Adams, and the whole city will talk about us." Meanwhile, Michael leaned against the wall with a sly grin. He pulled one of his closest friends aside. "Wait until Sarah arrives," he whispered. "She'll come in looking cheap, like the poor woman she's always been. And when she sees me with Linda, standing in all this glory, she'll break. That's the moment I've been waiting for." The friend frowned. "Michael, isn't that cruel? She was your wife once." Michael smirked. "Cruel? No. She's the reason I suffered all those years. This is payback. Today, I will disgrace her in front of everyone." But while Michael laughed, Sarah was in another part of the city, quietly preparing for her own moment. She stood before a full-length mirror in a private dressing room. The tailor had outdone himself, a flowing golden gown that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was neatly styled, her face glowing with quiet confidence. For the first time in years, Sarah didn't look broken. She looked powerful. "Are you ready?" A soft voice asked. Sarah turned and smiled at the chauffeur waiting by the door. "Yes, let's go." The black Rolls-Royce purred to life as she slid inside. She glanced at the 3 car seats beside her, where her triplets sat giggling, dressed in matching outfits. Sarah touched each of their faces lovingly, her eyes filling with tears, but this time, not tears of pain. "Mommy, where are we going?" one of them asked. She smiled gently. "Somewhere important, my loves, somewhere the world will see who we truly are." Back at the wedding hall, the music started, guests filled their seats, and Michael stood at the altar, chest lifted high. Suddenly, the sound of an engine outside turned heads. People rushed to the windows. A Rolls-Royce was pulling up. Michael's smile faltered. As the Rolls-Royce rolled toward the wedding hall, Sarah's mind drifted back to the night Michael left her. The cold silence of that evening had nearly destroyed her. She thought she would never rise again. But life had other plans. 1 year after Michael abandoned her, Sarah met David. He was nothing like Michael. Where Michael saw weakness, David saw strength. Where Michael mocked, David encouraged. He met her when she was at her lowest, working long shifts at a bakery just to survive. One evening, after watching her carry heavy boxes alone, David walked up. "You don't have to do this all by yourself," he said softly. Sarah looked at him, suspicious at first, but his gentle smile melted her defenses. He didn't care about her past. He didn't care about her childlessness. All he cared about was her heart. Slowly, Sarah opened up to him. They prayed together, worked side by side, and dreamed bigger than she had ever dared. With David's guidance, she started a small catering business. At first, it was just baked goods and homemade meals, but word spread, and within 2 years, her company was catering for banks, hotels, and high-profile events. Money came. Respect came. And then, the miracle she thought impossible, children. Doctors had once told her she might never conceive. But after years of pain and prayers, she gave birth. Not to 1 child, not to 2, but to 3. Triplets. The day they were born, she cried harder than she ever had before. Not from sorrow, but from overwhelming joy. Now, as the car slowed to a stop outside Michael's wedding, Sarah looked at her children again. They were her crown, her victory, her proof that no man, no insult, no betrayal could define her destiny. The chauffeur stepped out, opening her door. Guests craned their necks, gasps already filling the air. Sarah took a deep breath. She stepped out gracefully, her golden gown glowing under the sun. The triplets held her hands, walking beside her like little royalty. Inside, Michael froze at the sight. His worst nightmare had just walked through the door. The wedding hall buzzed with music and chatter. Guests in sparkling gowns and sharp suits filled the seats, fanning themselves as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Waiters glided between tables carrying trays of champagne. Cameras flashed. At the altar, Michael stood tall, chest out, a smug grin plastered across his face. He looked every bit the successful man he always wanted to be. Beside him, Linda adjusted her diamond necklace, soaking in the stares of admiration. "Michael, are you nervous?" she whispered, smiling sweetly. "Not at all," he replied, his voice dripping with pride. "Today is perfect, and it's about to get even better." Linda tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Michael smirked. "An old friend is coming. Let's just say, it will be unforgettable." Before Linda could press further, the MC announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The ceremony is about to begin." The music swelled, and the crowd hushed. The hall doors opened, and people turned, expecting the bridal procession. But instead, a low, heavy sound rumbled outside. The A sleek, black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of the hall. Whispers broke out instantly. "Whose car is that? Did a governor come?" "No, it looks even newer." Michael's grin faltered. He forced a laugh, but his palms began to sweat. The chauffeur stepped out in a crisp suit, walking to the passenger side. He opened the door slowly, deliberately, as though the entire world needed to witness the moment. The first thing the guests saw was gold. A gown that shimmered like sunlight. Then, a figure stepped out, Sarah. Gasps filled the hall. Cameras flashed wildly. People clutched their pearls, hands flying to their mouths. But the shock didn't end there. 3 children, identical, adorable, and dressed in matching outfits, hopped out beside her. They held Sarah's hands proudly, walking with her as though they owned the ground beneath them. Inside the hall, Linda's smile froze. Michael's throat went dry. This can't be," he whispered, his knees threatening to give way. The doors of the wedding hall swung open. Every head turned. The music faltered, and for a moment, silence swallowed the room. Sarah stood tall in her golden gown, the triplets holding her hands. The glittering lights caught her smile, making her glow brighter than the chandeliers above. Guests gasped, leaning toward one another. "Isn't that Sarah? Michael's ex-wife? I thought she was barren." And, triplets. Phones rose into the air as people snapped photos, recorded videos. The whispers turned into loud chatter, echoing through the hall. Linda's grip on Michael's arm tightened. "Who is that?" she hissed, though she already knew. Michael's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes widened, his body stiff. He had imagined Sarah walking in with shame, with a faded dress and lowered head. But this vision of grace, wealth, and motherhood was something his mind couldn't accept. Sarah walked slowly down the aisle, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The triplets clung to her hands, their innocent faces beaming as though they were the guests of honor. Each step Sarah took made Michael shrink a little more. The pride in his chest deflated, replaced with a rising panic. "Smile," Linda whispered through clenched teeth. "People are watching." But Michael couldn't smile. His forehead glistened with sweat. His heart pounded louder than the music. As Sarah approached the front, she paused, scanning the hall with calm eyes. She saw the faces, some shocked, some secretly delighted, others whispering in disbelief. She had been the woman everyone pitied. Tonight, she was the woman everyone envied. Finally, her gaze fell on Michael. Their eyes locked. For a split second, he saw the same woman he had abandoned, yet now she was transformed into someone untouchable. Sarah lifted her chin slightly, a graceful smile curving her lips. Then, with her children still beside her, she took the front row seat reserved for special guests. The hall buzzed louder, guests nudging one another. Michael's chest tightened. This was not the script he had planned. The hall was no longer a wedding, it was a battlefield of whispers. "Sarah looks like a queen," one woman murmured. "And those children, triplets. Can you believe it?" another gasped. Michael must be choking inside, a man chuckled under his breath. Phones continued flashing. Social media was already buzzing. Hashtags were forming. The story of Sarah's entrance was spreading faster than the wedding vows could be spoken. At the altar, Linda's perfect smile began to crack. She leaned closer to Michael, her voice sharp. "Why didn't you tell me she had children?" Michael swallowed hard. Because she didn't. I swear, she couldn't. This isn't possible. But the evidence stood right in front of them. 3 beautiful children, each looking so much like Sarah that no one dared question their identity. The officiator cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us continue." But no one was listening. All eyes remained glued on Sarah. Even the camera crew shifted their lenses toward her, ignoring Linda's forced smile. Sarah sat gracefully, her golden gown spread around her like a crown. She stroked her children's hair gently, her calmness sharper than any insult Michael had ever thrown at her. Inside, Michael burned. His plan had failed spectacularly. Instead of disgrace, Sarah had stolen the spotlight. The shame he intended for her had turned back on him. Linda felt it too. The way guests looked at Sarah with admiration, with envy, was the way she had always wanted them to look at her. Instead, she was invisible, a shadow beside Sarah's light. "Michael," she hissed through clenched teeth, "everyone is watching her, not us. Do something." Michael's fists tightened. His pride screamed for action, but his mind spun in panic. What could he do? Sarah glanced up, meeting his eyes once more. This time, she didn't smile. She simply held his gaze, calm and unshaken. And in that silence, Michael felt it, the walls of his empire cracking, his power slipping away, his humiliation complete. But Sarah wasn't finished yet. The wedding hall was restless. Guests no longer whispered, they leaned forward, waiting, sensing the drama was far from over. Finally, Michael broke. He stepped down from the altar, his face twisted with anger. "Sarah," he snapped, his voice echoing through the speakers, "what is this? Why are you here dressed like this? And whose children are those?" The hall gasped. All eyes shot to Sarah. She rose slowly, every movement graceful, deliberate. The triplets clung to her hands as she faced him. "You invited me, Michael. Or have you forgotten?" Her voice was calm, but every word cut like glass. Michael's jaw tightened. "Don't play games. You came here to embarrass me. To ruin my wedding." Sarah let out a soft laugh that made Linda flinch. "Embarrass you? No, Michael. You did that all by yourself the day you threw me away because I had no children. You mocked me, you humiliated me, and now..." She looked at the triplets, then back at him. "God has turned my tears into joy." The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some cheered. Michael's face burned red. Linda stormed forward, her voice sharp. "Enough of this. Michael, make her leave. This is our day." But Sarah wasn't done. She turned, her golden gown sweeping the floor as she spoke louder, her voice filling the hall. These children are mine. And yes, they are triplets. The doctors once told me it was impossible. Michael told me I was worthless. But look at me now. Not only am I a mother. She paused, letting the silence stretch, the anticipation build. Then she dropped the revelation like a thunderclap. I am also the co-owner of one of the biggest catering companies in this city. The very company that provided the food for this wedding today. Gasps. Shouts. Cameras flashed wildly. Michael staggered back, his eyes wide. Linda's face drained of color. The guests broke into chaos. Sarah stood tall, her children beside her, her voice steady. Michael, you invited me to disgrace me. But instead, I came to remind you, no one can curse what God has already blessed. Michael's world collapsed in front of everyone. The wedding hall was in chaos. Guests were no longer whispering, they were shouting, recording, laughing, gossiping. Michael's perfect day had turned into his worst nightmare. He stood frozen, sweat dripping down his forehead as the truth echoed again and again in his mind. Sarah owns the company. Sarah has children. Sarah has everything I said she would never have. Linda lost control. She ripped off her veil and threw it on the floor. You fool, Michael, she screamed. You told me she was nothing. That she could never have children. And now look at us. She's richer than both of us combined. The crowd gasped, some even laughing openly. Guests began to leave, shaking their heads, disappointed in the groom they once admired. Michael reached for Linda's hand, but she slapped it away. Don't touch me. You've embarrassed me in front of the whole city. She turned on her heels and stormed out, her heels clicking like thunder against the floor. The cameras caught every second. Within minutes, the scandal was live online, groom disgraced at his own wedding. Sarah, however, remained calm. She gathered her children close and spoke softly, her voice carrying a quiet strength. I came here today not to fight, not to gloat. I came to show that no one's opinion defines who you are. Not even the person you once loved. Some guests clapped. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Michael sank to his knees, defeated, humiliated. His pride, his plans, his new marriage shattered in a single afternoon. Sarah stepped forward, her golden gown glistening under the lights. She looked down at him one last time. Michael, you invited me here to disgrace me. But in the end, it was you who disgraced yourself. With that, she turned, holding her children's hands. The doors opened, and she walked out with her head held high. The Rolls-Royce was waiting. As she and her triplets entered, the crowd outside erupted in cheers. And that was the last anyone saw of Michael that day. Moral: never look down on someone in their struggle. For the same stone you throw may be the one you trip over tomorrow.